The next talk continue on these topics, learning to learn the context of changing educational public policy in Mexico. And the speaker is Hugo Brito, that substituted one of the speakers of the talk. Thank you.
I add one thing. Thank you very much to our colleague Hugo Brito, because he has been coming to the conference for his talk, his own talk, but he is now presenting a work of colleagues in Mexico that are traveling currently. So thank you to
but participated to this argument. Okay, thank you again.
Yes. Yes. First of all, well, I'd like to start by saying that I will present this work on behalf of my Mexican colleagues. I'm Mexican also, and it could be a positive aspect in order to understand or to present what my colleagues wanted to do today. But it's important to say that I will present my interpretation regarding the slides. And I didn't prepare the slides, then, well, then it's important for me to start with this. Well, Mexico case is part of the international project which has been resumed by Christina Stringer. It's part of the qualitative phase to start also a theoretical discussion and also to highlight some political aspects which take part at the moment of discussing about learning to learn competence in a specific social context and a specific political context. Then in a specific educational political context, because learning to learn is a competence which had importance until international institutions highlighted. Then in Mexico, of course, there are a lot of studies regarding the importance of learning to learn competence, but just recently it drew the attention of the political makers. Then I think that my colleagues wanted to highlight these aspects. Well, first, well, in Mexico, there have been several reforms. I think that this table is positive, but it's not possible to understand the political context. The first and the second row represent the party who was in the power during almost 70 years. And the third and the fourth floor, from 2000, Mexico changed for the first time the government. Then it arrived a new party who started strong changes into educational field. And in 2012 came back the same old party, and it continued more or less the same way regarding neoliberalist educational policies. And now, in 2018, for the first time, a new party from a left party arrived to the power. Then it's important because the educational reforms in Mexico, of course, have had a strong influence regarding two things. The term, the competence term, which was introduced more or less in 2008 in Mexican schools for the first time. I mean, from the political point of view, because of course there have been a lot of research and scientific discussion regarding the competence approach, but Mexican government took into account it until more or less 2008. And the learning to learn model was launched in 2017. Then now we don't know what is going to happen with this approach. Well, according to my colleagues, it has to do also, these political changes have to do a lot with the way by means the school, the teachers, and the students have been evaluated from the point of view of the educational system. Then in 2002, the National Institute for Educational Assessment was created in order to evaluate the organization, the school organizations, teachers, and students according to the point of view of international institutes, among them OECD. And it has to do with the introduction of the competence approach. And since then, there have been different social conflicts into Mexican educational context, because the educational reform had a strong relationship regarding the work rights and regarding the structural aspects by means the education has to be improved. Then we are talking about quality and international measurement. I mean, the Mexican government wanted to assess the schools because if you assess the schools, you can improve education. But the core aspect of the reform was that even if competence approach was taken into account, the real thing was to take off the work rights of teachers. Then, in this context, this institute was created, which is more or less the same than INVALSI, but it disappeared in 2019, in the context of the new government. And it's important to say that this movement, this turbulences reflect how teachers have had to do their work and how they have had to approach the improvement in the schools. It's very common in educational debate in Mexico to start by pointing out that the Mexican education cannot be improved if before the work conditions of teachers are not improved. Then, in this sense, according to my colleagues, the interpretation of the concepts which take part in the reforms are rejected also, which is the case, for example, of the competence approach, which was very, which have had, or I don't know if better to say, had a strong resistance to be admitted into Mexican field, within Mexican field, educational field. The competence-based approach was rejected, more or less, because the connotation of the term competence in Mexico has to do with competition. It has not been seen as the set of skills and competences. And it is related also with the economic development, because if we take into account that for OECD, learning to learn is important because this competence support economical development, then Mexican teachers interpreted that it had to do rather with another discussion. And this is a typical way of approaching educational reforms. And it's very common to hear also that learning is not the main thing in this field. Then, regarding learning to learn competence, it was explicitly named as part of the curriculum, but for just for a very short time. In October 2017, we can say that it was a concept explicitly by means the teachers had to work with it in the classrooms. Then maybe it is one reason why in the qualitative project the teachers talk about in the results of the interview that we made in Mexico. Teachers approach explicitly learning to learn competence, and then we are talking about two sides of the thing, of the same thing. Learning to learn has a positive recognition, but in the middle of these political struggles, one side effect could be that learning to learn could be interpreted as a neoliberalist concept also, because it is strongly related with international institutes. Now, currently, the new government is talking about the creation of a new Mexican school. And of course, they are preparing new changes in order to create a more authentic and educational approach. And personally, I don't have a clear idea if they are going to continue with, for example, with learning to learn competence or not, which we can say that with the new model, most probably the competence-based approach is going to be totally rejected. In order to talk about a more local perspective regarding Mexican education. And in this sense, I'd finish my whole presentation by highlighting what my colleagues thought. According to them, it is necessary to relocate the problem of the student learning, or learning as part of the national educational agenda. And it's not clear how into the new educational model the lifelong learning approach could be promoted and supported. And according to Victor and Irene, this is the state of the art regarding political context in Mexico today. I warmly thank you for your attention, for your patience.